world's top underwater nature cinematographers. Traveling the world on assignment for all the major networks, he is an Emmy Award-winning authority on the underwater world. In freshwater or salt, reefs, wrecks, or caves, Jonathan documents the world beneath the waves. Welcome to the Blue World.
The Blue World team has traveled to the tropical island of Roatan to explore some of the healthiest reefs in the Caribbean. Roatan is an island located 40 miles off the coast of mainland Honduras in Central America. It's a popular vacation destination for North Americans, not only because of nice beaches and proximity to the U.S., but also because of the healthy marine environment. Zach, Diver Ed, and I start our day meeting Lindy Warren of Infinity Divers. Lindy is a very famous Roatan dive master, and we're lucky to have him to show us around. Well, we're here in beautiful Roatan, Honduras. It's a beautiful day, and we're gonna do some nice tropical diving, baby. This is my favorite kind of diving, nice warm water. Check this out. Roatan is known for super healthy coral reefs and a robust population of sea turtles. And while we have seen sea turtles many times, we're hoping to capture some really interesting behaviors. We tie up at a popular site known for really great coral and deep channels that bring clear water into the shallows. I love the sand on the rig, that's great. Adds the flavor. I'm gonna have a super easy and fun dive because I'm testing out my new IMAX camera. Actually, it's a GoPro Hero 10 that shoots in 5K. Even though Lindy has done more than 10,000 dives, he never gets bored of showing people these beautiful sights. He leads us down through a channel in the reef. It dumps us out on the wall at 110 feet. Here, the reef drops precipitously into the blue. The light down here is low, and the GoPro image quality is kinda noisy. We follow Lindy on a search for a sea turtle. Along the way, I can't help but notice all of the interesting sponges. I'm a sucker for a pretty sponge. Some of these barrel sponges grow quite large. And the beauty of a GoPro is getting an interesting perspective. Eventually, we find our first sea turtle. It's a small female hawksbill searching for lunch. She has some red algae on her shell. She could really use a few surgeonfish. I'm gonna call her Fuzzbutt. Even though sea turtles live their whole lives in the ocean, they're still reptiles and need to breathe air at the surface. So, every 5 to 10 minutes, a sea turtle must go up for a few breaths. Catch you later, Fuzzbutt. In the meantime, we have a look around. We find a few more lionfish. They might not belong here, but they are still one of the most beautiful fish on the reef. But don't touch, because those spines are extremely venomous. Speaking of venomous, the scorpionfish is easy to miss with that awesome camouflage, and this fish packs venomous dorsal spines too.
I spy an indigo hamlet. They're a little more common here than in the rest of the Caribbean, but it's still a rare sight. Lindy is filming something with his GoPro, and another turtle comes down to investigate. Turtles can be quite curious, and they know that divers will not hurt them. This lady is hungry, and she's on a mission to find a snack. Finally, she finds her favorite food, which is a particularly tough sponge. Fish can't eat these sponges because they simply can't bite into them. And she's having a hard time too. Not many animals find sponges particularly good to eat. But sea turtles and a few species of fish can digest the tough fibers. Finally, she finds the perfect sponge and begins ripping it open. Almost immediately, a queen angelfish joins the party to mooch a few scraps. The angelfish could never eat this sponge without the turtle's help. Gets out fast. Soon, a gray angelfish shows up at the table. And then another. It's a full-on buffet. This sea turtle has a scar on her left side, maybe from a shark bite when she was younger. So I'm calling her shark bait. She doesn't mind if I get in close to watch. All this eating is making me hungry. The food at this restaurant is pretty good, but she needs to breathe. While sharkbait goes for a breath, two more hawksbills show up. Oh wait, it's Fuzzbutt! Followed closely behind by another female hawksbill. I don't know where all the males are. Maybe they slept in. Fuzzbutt and the other hawksbill are circling around, almost as if they're trying to find something. minutes later, Fuzzbutt has somehow discovered Sharkbait's half-eaten sponge and picks up where she left off, biting off large chunks. The angelfish don't seem particularly picky about who they steal their scraps from. But soon, Sharkbait is back from her trip to the surface to breathe, and she's not happy to find Fuzzbutt eating her sponge. It comes to a head, and an argument breaks out. It looks violent, but they're not really hurting each other. Eventually, Fuzzbutt swims away, leaving Sharkbait to continue feeding on her sponge. I'm really excited to witness this interesting behavior. Who knew that fish could take advantage of a sea turtle's strong jaws? We might have scuba gear allowing us to breathe underwater, but like the sea turtles, we must eventually surface as well. And all that feeding action is making me hungry, so it's time to head back to the dock for lunch. The beautiful reefs of Roatan certainly did not disappoint. From the coral swim-throughs to the abundance of fish, and of course the amazing sea turtles, Roatan is a lovely place to explore the blue world.
Don't go away. Jonathan and Todd are going to squeeze into the smallest cave they've ever attempted.
It's a beautiful day on Merritt's Mill Pond. Located in Marianna, Florida, just west of Tallahassee, this small man-made lake contains entrances to 7 different caves. Today, cameraman Todd, Zach of all trades, and I are looking for one of the smallest caves on the pond. We rented a pontoon boat to explore as many of the caves as we can manage in our short visit. We head north from our rental house in search of Shangri-La Cave. It's easy to find because of the crystal clear water surrounding the entrance. We pull our boat gently into the shallow water near shore. There's a small metal post to tie off the boat. But a lasso, a little more. That one's on. Next to us, clear water flows strongly from this spring. It's the kind of inviting water that cave divers crave. We got some pointers from local instructor Mehdi Zanetti, so we know this is going to be a very tight cave, which sounds fun. With this in mind, we suit up for some adventure. We have a quick peek inside so we can figure out our plan. We have a short chat and decide to bring only GoPro cameras because our regular cameras are too big for this cave.
The main line, but I couldn't see where the main line really began.
At last, we begin the dive with Todd leading the way. If you think the entrance looks small, you haven't seen anything yet.
We fight our way in against the flow and discover it's a pretty spacious cavern zone.
We have only a single video light to keep the GoPro rig small. I follow Todd into the cave while he ties off our reel. Heading further into the cave, we quickly arrive at a tiny restriction going down into the floor. And that's the only way to proceed, so Todd pushes on down. It's a tighter squeeze than it looks.
Once I get down in there, I can see the line, but there doesn't appear to be an easy way to follow it. The ceiling and floor are so close together, I'm wondering if I'll even fit.
From behind Todd, I can see the problem. Man, this is one tiny cave. Todd picks the biggest opening and starts heading that way. There's literally just enough room to squirm through. Up ahead, Todd follows the main line. We expected the cave to open up once we got through the first restriction, and it has, but not very much. I'm hanging back far enough that if we need to turn around, we won't be kicking each other too much. Thankfully, the floor of the cave is not super silty, and the silt we do manage to kick up is being washed away quickly in the flow of water. Todd continues his slow progression upstream into the cave. I have it a little easier because I'm following, but I have worse visibility being downstream.
Someone has laid line in here, so we know people can fit. Many had said that in order to go further, you'd have to remove both tanks. And it looks like we've reached that point.
Because I'm behind, I do a very clumsy turnaround and begin leading the way out.
I'm turning around as well, but there isn't much space.
Soon we're both turned around and heading out. At last, we claw our way back to the hole in the floor and emerge back into the cavern. As much as we enjoyed that little adventure, I think we're both glad to be back into a space large enough to swim. In 5 minutes, all the silt we kicked up will be totally gone.
It's time to head back to the light. Since we never exceeded 25 feet, we don't even have to do a safety stop.
Oh, man. That restriction at the end where I turned, I don't think I could fit through without taking a tank off. So I went as far as I could.
It looked bigger inside than it was.
And even as I went further, as far as I could see into that next area, it was the same low ceiling and mud. But, I tried that second time trying to get through, and it's just like I have to take a tank off. It's just not quite wide enough.
Yeah.
Or I gotta stop eating the pizza.
Yeah, one or the other.
Shangri-La is one of the smallest caves in Merritt's Mill Pond. It's not deep, and it doesn't go very far. But it's an incredible dive for adventurous side-mount cave divers. Meanwhile, we have many other caves to explore in this extraordinary pond and the blue world.
Meet Jonathan Bird, one of the world's top underwater nature cinematographers. Traveling the world on assignment for all the major networks, he is an Emmy Award-winning authority on the underwater world. In freshwater or salt, reefs, wrecks, or caves, Jonathan documents the world beneath the waves. Welcome to the Blue World.
This might look like a plain old bridge. Nothing special. A way for cars to cross over Florida's intercoastal waterway. There are lots of bridges like this. This one, however, is special. It's the Blue Heron Bridge in Riviera Beach, one of the most famous muck dives in the world. The intercoastal waterway is connected to the ocean, but protected by land, so it's calm. Water moves in and out with the tides, but without big waves, it's a great place for boating and diving. Who would think that in the sand around the pilings of this bridge would be a world-class dive site for rare marine life? Cameraman Todd, Zach of All Trades, and I head on down to Riviera Beach, Florida for a critter diving adventure. The last time I was here, back in 2016, I saw all kinds of stuff, like batfish, an octopus, and a jawfish with eggs. But I definitely didn't find everything that the site is known for. My quarry today is the elusive stargazer. They're here, but they're really hard to find. Our adventure begins with a quick trip to Force East Scuba to rent some scuba tanks. And I'm gonna try to convince my friend Jeff Nelson to be our dive guide because he knows where all the cool critters are.
Hey, Jeff! Good to see you.
How's it going?
How are you?
Good.
This is Todd.
Hi. How you doing, bud?
So what time's the tide tonight?
6 o'clock. We're getting in the water. Getting wet.
Man, we better get going. All right.
Whoa.
Located at one end of the Blue Heron Bridge is Phil Foster Park. It's a nice beach under a bridge. If you love the beach but you don't like the sun, this is the place for you. We've arrived at sunset because the tides determine our dive schedule. You can only dive at slack tide to avoid excessive current. Soon, slack tide is approaching, and it's time to hit the water, so we start suiting up.
I haven't been scuba diving in a while.
Suck it in. This is such a fun dive. I'm always excited walking down to the water. I know I'm going to see something cool. I just don't know what it'll be. We don't even swim out. We start the dive in waist-deep water because we'll find stuff immediately. Jeff takes the lead, pulling our dive flag floating above, which keeps us safe from boats in the shallow water. It's already a night dive, but if anything, that makes it easier for Jeff to see stuff with his powerful flashlight. We're not even 2 meters deep and he starts finding seahorses everywhere. Most of them are brown and camouflaged, so they're very easy to miss. I don't think I would find most of them on my own. As I film something, Jeff looks for the next cool thing. The seahorses here have a lot of experience with photographers, and I think they've figured out that we won't hurt them, so they're pretty tolerant of our lights. While filming this reddish seahorse, I noticed that the rock in the background is moving. Wait, is that a rock? It's a batfish, one of the weirdest fish in the ocean. It has pectoral fins turned around frontwards to work like feet. It has hidden gill openings in its armpits so it can stay camouflaged. There's a pouty little mouth and a lure that comes out of a hole in its face. Wait for it. There. The water here isn't even as deep as a swimming pool. The batfish seems pretty sure that its camouflage is working, but finally it gets tired of me and decides to swim away, which looks like a combination of swimming and waddling. Swaddling? Definitely not very graceful. Soon I find a flounder, expertly camouflaged in the sand. Unlike most bottom-dwelling fish, flounder lie on their sides, not their belly. But in the adult form, both eyes end up on the same side of their head so that one of them isn't buried in the sand. That gives them good vision from that low vantage point and super camouflage. Nearby, Jeff finds a sole, which is basically the same thing as a flounder. This one, known as a naked sole, doesn't have particularly good coloration for camouflage, so it has a trick. With a light dusting of sand and pebbles, it blends right in, ready for ambush. Moving along and scanning the bottom, I come across a burrowing anemone that lives in a tube in the sand. And nearby, a fireworm, an animal with needle-like bristles. This is one critter you never touch. And not far away, a large cushion sea star marching across the sand. Its bright coloration is the opposite of camouflage. It's called aposematic. It means, go ahead and try to eat me, I dare you, I taste bad. Talk about camouflage, Jeff finds a scorpion fish hanging out in a pile of rubble. Although these fish are not aggressive at all towards people, they have a potent defensive sting. You need to be careful where you put your hand. A little pufferfish escaping from my lights runs right into an arrow crab minding its own business, who gives a few defensive jabs. Excuse me, sorry, coming through. It's hard not to love arrow crabs with their spindly limbs, blue claws, and a face like a cartoon character. Speaking of crabs, we find a little decorator crab which has covered itself in red sponges and a couple little white coral polyps. It's a tiny walking coral reef, but unfortunately it looks like maybe the camouflage has gotten a little bit out of control. It can barely walk with all that stuff. And maybe a little front heavy, like an overstuffed scarecrow. A scuba tank lasts a long time in 10 feet of water, but after nearly 2 hours underwater, it's finally time to head back to the beach. The next morning, it's back to the bridge for another slack tide. Todd and I suit up and hit the water.
Don't go away. Jonathan still has to find the stargazer, and he plays with some friendly seals.
Once again, Jeff has our safety float and his eagle eyes for critter spotting. During the day, it's a little more apparent that this is not deep diving. I feel confident that today we will find that stargazer. We spot an upside-down jellyfish pulsating on the bottom, waiting for the strong sunlight that powers the symbiotic algae in its skin. Jeff takes me over to an old mooring with a bit of rope still attached. There's a tiny striated frogfish that lives here. But it can be very hard to find a frogfish, even when you know it's around here someplace. Just when we're about to give up, he realizes that it moved from the mooring to the end of the rope. The frogfish is so small that I don't even realize what he's pointing to. Once I actually see the teeny fish, I switch over to my super close-up lens. The striated frogfish, otherwise known as the hairy frogfish, is one of the most sought-after creatures of this dive site. Looking like a sponge covered in marine growth, the hairy frogfish waits patiently for prey. She's only about the size of my thumb, but this is a serious predator. She has a fishing pole on her forehead. On the end is a tiny little lure that looks like a worm.
Here, fishy, fishy.
Jeff returns and rescues me from a curious fireworm. Swimming along, we find a tiny section of reef. All the fish hang out on the reef, while just a few feet away on the sand, it's a different story. On another reef, a school of sheep's head hang out. Reef fish like reefs, so out here on the sand, any small patch of reef is like an oasis in a desert. And since the reef is kind of small and the fish really don't want to leave it, they allow me to get pretty close. Jeff leads me on towards another spot he wants to investigate for a stargazer. We don't find a stargazer, but we do find this little guy. He's a dragonet, a tiny fish only a couple inches long. He has a big yellow dorsal fin that he uses to impress the female dragonets.
Hey baby, check out this awesome fin!
She is not impressed. Oh well, there's plenty of fish in the sea. Jeff just keeps swimming, and I'm beginning to wonder how far we're going. Soon he starts heading under the bridge, on his way to the other side. He knows where he's going, so I just keep following. I hope I have enough air, but we're only 10 feet deep, so if I have to surface, I'll figure it out. On the other side of the bridge, Jeff finally spots what he's looking for, the telltale face of a stargazer in the sand. Buried up to the eyeballs, the stargazer is the ultimate ambush predator. It can sit still without moving for days. I can't believe he actually found one. Jeff tries to remove the sand a little without spooking the fish so I can get a better shot, but the fish knows she's been spotted. I don't want to lose the fish that took so long to find, but if I follow too close, she'll panic and bolt out of range. So I have to hang back and, swim casual-like. Finally, she stops. Jeff and I keep our distance so she won't flee again. She landed in a spot with too much rubble and not enough sand, so it's not a good spot to bury herself. And that's lucky for me, because now I can see what this awesome fish really looks like when it's not buried. So, are they called stargazers because they have star-like spots? Or because they gaze at the stars with those skyward gazing eyeballs? Maybe a little of both. She's being super cool about the camera in her face, but eventually she's ready for a spot she can bury herself and takes off. After what seems like forever, she finds an appropriate piece of soft sand and demonstrates the process of digging in. She's gulping lots of water in through her mouth and then blowing it out through her gills at the bottom of her body to blast the sand out of the way. So she digs with water pressure. And poof, just like that, she's gone. I feel bad for the next unwary fish to swim by. With our tanks getting really low, Jeff and I turn around for the long swim back to the beach. The tide has started to turn and the current picked up. Fortunately for us, we're drifting with the current, so that helps us get back more easily. And we're back in no time. Diving the Blue Heron Bridge is always an adventure. Whether it's night or day, there are all kinds of creatures to see. Some animals are easy to find, but for the rarer things, having a good guide really helps. The rubbly, sandy environment has cultivated a wide variety of adaptations for survival. Finding something like a stargazer is not easy, but when you finally find it, what a rush to see something so rare and amazing in the blue world.
So, a couple of days ago, we dropped his sister at college. And we're kind of depressed as we miss her. Yeah. And we needed a little picker-upper. So we're here in Cape Ann with Captain Fran, and we'll see what we can find today.
We're diving Cape Ann, Massachusetts, my local stomping ground, where I learned to dive all those years ago. We depart from the marina in Gloucester and head out to the north through the Annisquam River. Eventually, we pass the Annisquam Lighthouse. Liam and Christine are ready for some cold water fun. We cruise around the north side of Cape Ann to reach a bunch of rocks called the Dry Salvages, memorialized in a T.S. Eliot poem by the same name, where they were made to rhyme with assuages. As a result, many people today still call them the Dry Salvages. Whether salvages or salvages, these rocks likely got their name originally from causing a shipwreck that needed salvaging. In the fog at high tide, they're easy to miss. But they certainly are popular with the local gray seal population. At low tide, they haul out to rest and warm up. But at high tide, they hunt for fish in the surrounding waters. Captain Fran pulls up and throws anchor a ways off, while Christine, Liam, and I suit up for a dive. Down on the rocks below the boat, we find lots of algae and a healthy sea star population. There's no way to sneak up on seals with noisy scuba gear, so the only way to see them is to wait for them to get curious. So we look for other things to film. Liam finds a rock crab. There are lots of rock crabs apparently feeding on the prodigious quantities of mussels on the bottom. It looks like Liam has himself a new pet. I find a lobster hiding under a giant boulder. It's definitely not coming out with the bright lights in its face. Then a seal takes a pass by to check us out. Seals are really curious. If they think they're missing out on something fun, they definitely come over to have a look. So we need to look like we're having fun. I'm hunting around for a good spot to hang out. Not too deep and not too shallow. A little gully makes an ideal place. A seal makes another pass. We didn't get the best visibility today, and the shallow water has a lot of loose stuff in it churned up by the waves, but at least we can see him. If we tried to chase the seals, they would be frightened and swim away. They have to come to us, so our mission is to be patient and look like we're doing something really interesting. Christine doesn't even realize she has a seal nibbling on her fins. The seals seem fascinated with our fins. Finally, one seal develops a curiosity about the camera lens. Then Liam uses the secret weapon, fins. For whatever reason, seals just love to investigate fins. So we sit and flap them around. Having had our fun and starting to get cold, we head back to the boat. The salvages are just a bunch of rocks barely poking above the surface of the Atlantic Ocean. They're responsible for more than one shipwreck over the years, but they make an ideal place for seals to climb out of the cold water to rest and warm up. And if it's not too rough, a great spot for a family dive in the blue world.
Meet Jonathan Bird, one of the world's top underwater nature cinematographers. Traveling the world on assignment for all the major networks, he is an Emmy Award-winning authority on the underwater world. In freshwater or salt, reefs, wrecks, or caves, Jonathan documents the world beneath the waves. Welcome to the Blue World.
The Turks and Caicos Islands are probably most famous around the world for their beautiful soft white sand beaches. The Turks and Caicos are a British overseas territory consisting of 40 islands located south of the Bahamas in the Caribbean. The most populated island in the archipelago is Providenciales, known locally as Provo. The eastern end of Provo has a system of canals leading out to the ocean. And just offshore, famously healthy coral reefs full of marine life. One of the most famous residents of the reef on this end of the island is Jojo the dolphin, who's been living here and occasionally interacting with humans since 1980, making him at least 45 years old. We're hoping to meet him. It's February in New England, so it's time for the bird family to fly south on a little dive vacation. And only 4 hours later, we're on the beach.
Welcome to paradise.
It's not all just scuba diving. We spend a day driving jet skis where we discover a shipwreck. We go for a horseback ride, and of course, we hit the beach.
Liam, let's go snorkeling. Okay.
Liam and Elise film a sea turtle. Not bad for free diving. But tomorrow we're going scuba diving. We head on over to Big Blue Collective, the dive shop right down the street from our rental house. They have a whole fleet of boats for water sport activities, not just scuba diving. But Captain Roger has taken us out on the big dive boat. We grab our gear from the car and then we meet Dive Master Charlie, who helps us load the boat.
Safety gear on this boat, life jackets are under the seats here.
We get a quick boat safety briefing, and we're off. It's been windy this week, and the shallows are a little milky from the surf. But out on the dive site, the water is a lot clearer. At last, having escaped Massachusetts winter, it's time to hit some tropical water. We sink down to the reef and start looking around. These reefs host lots of different kinds of sponges. Tube sponges are everywhere. And so are big barrel sponges. Charlie points out a crab hiding in the reef. There are a lot of gorgonians, which are a kind of soft coral. And sometimes you can find a brightly colored snail called a flamingo tongue on the Gorgonian. A Nassau grouper gives us an apprehensive look. And heads for safety. Elise finds what must be the biggest barrel sponge on the reef. She could probably fit inside. A trumpetfish, normally shy and hiding in the Gorgonian, seems curious about us. A pufferfish leads us over to a deep ravine in the reef. Down below, the silty water from the shallows is flowing through like a spooky river. So of course, we have to go down there and check it out. The kids notice that the Gorgonians are bending in the current. A big barrel sponge is growing horizontally out of the wall. We follow another trumpetfish into a big patch of Gorgonians. Trumpetfish hide in these similarly shaped structures. Dolphins sometimes cuddle up to Gorgonians for a tickle. Maybe Jojo will show up soon. Elise has a good eye for details. She finds a well-camouflaged scorpion fish. These fish are quite venomous and confident in their camouflage, so they rarely move, even when you film them up close. Further down the ravine, we hit the sandy bottom and swim up current. I spot a moray eel under a ledge. Unfortunately, it won't come out, even for Elise. Liam finds a squirrelfish and a porcupine fish. A parrotfish nibbles on the fuzzy algae growing on some coral. Soon it's time to head back to the boat, so we start our ascent. We do a safety stop under the boat with some company. It was a great dive, even without Jojo. We untie the mooring line and start making our way back to the dock, when suddenly a shape appears in the water. Is that a dolphin? There he is. Jojo, the famous dolphin, comes right over to the boat to play in our wake. Jojo! As Jojo has gotten older, he's become less interested in playing with divers, but he still loves surfing. He will hang with us for a long time if we stay near his part of the island. But finally, it's time for us to leave, and he goes back to his reef. The Turks and Caicos Islands are a wonderful place to visit. There are plenty of things to do, beautiful beaches, and great diving for all experience levels. And, with a little luck, you might get to meet JoJo.
Don't go away. Jonathan and Todd attempt to explore a small, silty cave at the bottom of a pond.
Merritt's Mill Pond in Marianna, Florida is one of my favorite places. This man-made reservoir was created by damming up a river originating at Jackson Blue Spring. It's a long, skinny, shallow pond filled with clear water and a bunch of great submerged caves. Located in northern Florida near Tallahassee, it's a cave diver's paradise. During our expedition to explore this area, we dove Jackson Blue Spring with legendary cave explorer Ed Sorensen, who owns the local dive shop, Cave Adventurers. Then Todd and I explored a tiny, fascinating cave called Shangri-La, which gave new meaning to the word restriction. And today we're off on another adventure to explore a cave known as Gator Hole. But first, we have to find it.
No, because there's that thing, but it wasn't that far, I don't think.
I think it was a little bit further from his shop, right?
Eventually, we do find it.
Over here.
And we navigate through a maze of tree stumps and logs to approach the entrance of the cave.
It's the big log here as well. Some logs underneath. Past that one. Big log, nicely done. I think that's good right in there. We'll figure out, tie up to the street.
It's not very inviting. Having no idea what to expect, we suit up in full side mount cave diving gear. At 67 degrees Fahrenheit, the water's not exactly warm. I should have brought my dry suit. And the thought has occurred to me that there might actually be a gator around here.
That's one way to do it.
We make our way to the cave entrance through the muck, hoping it gets clearer inside. We follow a plastic hose which was placed here to sample water quality. In this part of the cave, there's still air above our heads. Soon we reach the stop sign, and the real cave dive begins. We go around a corner and down to about 25 feet deep. Here, the floor of the cave is quite soft and silty. One misplaced fin kick will create quite a mess. But we have no choice because we reach a low section. Finally, we hit the first restriction. Todd's no dummy. He sends me through first to see if I can fit. It's barely a foot tall, and I make a rookie mistake by forgetting to release the air from my buoyancy compensator. So it sort of grinds against the stone. But to be fair, I'm trying to minimize how much I disturb the bottom. On the other side, the water's clear, and I turn around to film Todd coming through. But he signals that he wants to turn the dive and head back. One of the principal rules of cave diving is that anyone can call the dive at any time for any reason. So, I turn around and squeeze back through. On the other side, it's really silty. Going through the restriction made quite a mess of the cave. Todd saw how silty it was getting and decided that it would be safer to leave before we made it any worse. Because the dive is so shallow, we don't have to worry about doing any safety stops or decompression.
Well, that was quick.
Got to the first restriction and I went through it, and it's a really tight restriction. I had to wiggle against the bottom really hard to get through it, and it just really silted the place up. And I was like, on the other side where it's nice and clear, and I'm like, hey Todd, come on through it, I'll get a shot of you. And he's like, no, we're out. It was a good call.
After a conversation about our mutual comfort level with the silt, we decide to try again the next day, this time with smaller cameras and the knowledge that the cave will get silty.
All right.
The image quality on our GoPro rigs is not as good as our full-size cameras, but they fit in this little cave better. We head in and past the now familiar cavern zone and stop sign. Down at the bottom, the silt from yesterday has settled, but not for long. Doing my very best to minimize disturbing the bottom, I scrunch through the first restriction. This kind of diving is not for everyone, and honestly, I never would have thought I would enjoy this. But I do. It's super fun. On the other side, we encounter a low, wide passage with the same silty bottom. I'm not sure what this catfish is thinking being so far from the light of day. We pass fragments of turtle shell, the remains of turtles that swam in, got lost, and drowned. It doesn't take long before we reach a second restriction. I motion for Todd to go first, so he will have a chance to see some clear water. The diver in front gets the best view. We try to stick to the ceiling to minimize the siltation. But it's not always possible in really low sections. Following the low section, I can barely see Todd's light, even though he's only 10 feet ahead. On the walls of the cave, we can see evidence of a lower water level in the past. We reach a third restriction. On the other side, Todd suggests we turn to head back. On the way back, we can see how well we preserve the water clarity. And the answer is not well. I'm using the OK technique to keep a hand on the line because the viz is so bad. We always have to be gentle with the line because if it breaks, that's a big problem. In a higher flow cave, this silt would be washed away. But in this cave, it just hangs there for hours. The viz might be bad, but as long as we never lose the guideline, we'll be fine, because it takes us right back out to the entrance. When we finally make it back to the pond, I wonder how Gator Hole got its name. I'm not sure I want to come face to face with a gator in these murky conditions.
Well, you know, I didn't keep going because I wanted us to sort of progressively learn the cave rather than trying to get all the way to the end, because then if something goes wrong, you're not as well prepared for that contingent. And I wasn't really sure how clear it would be on the way out. So now we have a better understanding of how quickly the silt will dissipate. And so we can use that to our advantage in planning our next dive. The question is, should we do it again?
Merritt's Mill Pond is an amazing place to explore. There are 7 caves on this pond. Gator Hole is completely different from both of the other caves we've explored so far, and we've not even seen all the way to the back. I hope to explore this cave again on our next visit. But we also have 4 more caves to find and dive on Merritt's Mill Pond, giving us many more adventures to come in the blue world.
Meet Jonathan Bird, one of the world's top underwater nature cinematographers. Traveling the world on assignment for all the major networks, he is an Emmy Award-winning authority on the underwater world. In freshwater or salt, reefs, wrecks, or caves, Jonathan documents the world beneath the waves. Welcome to the Blue World.
The Central American nation of Belize is known for some of the most spectacular diving in the Caribbean, with crystal clear water and healthy coral reefs. Located between Mexico and Honduras, this small country is a scuba diver's dream destination. Zach and I arrive and board the Belize Aggressor 3, a liveaboard dive boat that will take us to sites all around the country. Liveaboards are awesome because you can get up to 5 dives per day when your dive boat and your hotel are the same thing. We will eat, sleep, and dive for the whole week on this luxury yacht. The following morning, we've arrived at Lighthouse Reef Atoll. The boat is surrounded by some of the clearest water I've ever seen, and I can't wait to go diving. The dive bell tells us it's time for a quick dive briefing. Captain Ken gives us a rundown on the site.
If you did not know, just slow it down, inflate your
Rock and roll.
rock and roll, baby.
And then it's time to suit up. Soon we hit the water and start looking for critters. I'm hoping to find a local reef resident named Norman, a friendly nurse shark that often investigates divers. We begin our dive by having a look around. The reefs seem really healthy with lots of sea fans and gorgonians. There are healthy sections of staghorn coral, something you don't see everywhere. An indigo hamlet stares me down. They're one of my favorite reef fish, a blue fish in a blue world. A school of surgeonfish goes to work. They have an important job eating the algae that grows on the reefs and making sure it doesn't smother the coral. All day long, they relentlessly move from coral to coral, chomping that algae. We come across a Nassau grouper that seems genuinely curious about us. He stares into my camera lens. And even into my eyes when I hold still. At first, I think maybe he wants to take a bite out of my face, but eventually it just seems like he's fascinated with us. Eventually, we move on in our search for Norman the nurse shark. Zach spots a peacock flounder in the sand. Flounder lie on their sides to hide, but they're specially adapted to do this with both eyes on the same side of their head, operating independently like a couple of periscopes. While Zach is playing with the flounder, I've found myself an arrow crab. I think they're cute. With no nurse shark in sight, I settle down on the bottom to film some yellowhead jawfish. Each one lives in a burrow on the bottom and pops out to grab bits of plankton passing by. They're kind of nervous fish, so I have to be patient to let them get used to me. Then they go back to acting normal. They're called jawfish because the males incubate their eggs inside their mouths. It's a pretty good way to protect the eggs, but it does present some problems. The expectant father can't eat for more than a week while the eggs incubate, and every few minutes he has to aerate them. While I'm filming the jawfish, Zach has found a nurse shark. But it's a female, definitely not Norman, and clearly not interested in hanging out with us. Nearby, maybe not the most exciting thing, a sea cucumber. This relative of the sea star digs through the sand for food, but that's not the weirdest thing about them. Their gills are in their rear. Yes, you heard me right. This sea cucumber is breathing through its butt. As we continue on the dive, I notice there are a lot of nice sponges. On the edge of the wall, an orange elephant ear sponge. On top of the wall, some of the biggest barrel sponges I've ever seen. All around the reef, there are healthy tube sponges. And when you look closely, you can find all kinds of animals that rely on sponges. In this tube sponge, a banded coral shrimp. In the next, a coney, just hanging out in safety. Nearby, a spiny lobster has found a nice barrel sponge to call home. And a little ways down the reef, there are bright red rope sponges mixed in with yellow tube sponges. But looking closer, I spot a seahorse clinging to the sponges. Looking like a rope sponge itself, the seahorse even flops around like a sponge. Very hard for predators to spot. Our friend the grouper comes back to have a look at what we're up to. If this fish has decided that we're friends, it only seems appropriate that we know what to call him. So we call him Rupert. And once he's satisfied that he isn't missing anything important, he goes on his way. Heading back into shallower water, I spot a green moray eel swimming between coral heads. She dives into the safety of the reef, then pokes her head out to investigate. With their sharp teeth on display, these animals are often considered dangerous, but in reality, they very rarely bite people. They hunt fish at night. We come across a female hawksbill sea turtle, and she has absolutely no interest in me and swims away. And a large male loggerhead passes by. They have huge jaws for crushing mollusk shells. But as I look through the reef, a shark passes by out in the blue. Could it be Norman? Nope, this is a curious Caribbean reef shark. They make a few passes to investigate. Contrary to popular belief, sharks are pretty smart fish, and they do get curious. Out in the blue, on the edge of the reef, an eagle ray makes a pass by us as well. They don't usually hang around.
Don't go away. Jonathan continues his search for Norman and explores the Great Blue Hole.
Back on the top of the reef, Dive Master Roque calls us over. He points to a swim-through that he knows we will enjoy. I drop down into a hole in the reef. It's not cave diving, but it looks fun to me. Inside, thousands of little fish known as silversides. They find safety here in this dark realm. Mostly. There are a couple of jacks in here trying to catch them. I pause to film for a minute, and Rupert comes in to see what I'm up to. Also lurking in here, a pair of lionfish. These invasive species from the Pacific Ocean somehow invaded the Caribbean. They like to hide in the reef and hunt small fish like silversides. I spy one of the rarest fish in the Caribbean, a white-spotted toadfish, which is endemic to Belize and has never been found anywhere else. Soon we head out of the coral cavern and swim up into the shallows. I come across a mass migration of conch. It's fascinating to observe. Okay, well, it's not particularly fast-paced. A conch is a big snail with eyes on long stalks, so it can see us coming. And when the coast is clear, it pulls itself along with a single foot. Captain Ken has joined us and has something he wants us to see. Hiding in the seagrass, and no larger than a paperclip, is a pipe horse, a tiny fish about halfway between being a pipefish and a seahorse. It curls its tail around the grass to hang on. There are other animals here in the seagrass. A pipefish with no prehensile tail like the pipe horse. And a shrimp, perfectly adapted to its grassy habitat. Nearby, a scorpionfish is doing an excellent job looking like an algae-covered rock. While I'm intently focused on filming the scorpionfish, a nurse shark swims right by me and I don't even see it. We finally found Norman, or should I say he found us. Norman moves from diver to diver, sticking his face right up to the lens and defying our attempts to get good shots. Norman is clearly not afraid of divers, and once he's checked us all out, he goes to have a nap. With our mission completed, we head back to the aggressor for a little rest before we do it all again. Belize might be a small country, but the diving is big. With incredible visibility, healthy reefs, and lots of marine life, it really is a wonderful place in the blue world. Zach and I have come on an expedition to explore the underwater world of Belize. We're working from the Aggressor 3 Liveaboard, which means we stay on this luxury yacht for a whole week, diving 4 to 5 times a day. Today, we're going to visit the Great Blue Hole, located 40 miles off the coast near Lighthouse Reef. The Great Blue Hole is the largest and most famous ocean blue hole in the world. It's 1,000 feet across, 400 feet deep, and was proclaimed one of the best dive sites in the world by none other than Jacques Cousteau. The Great Blue Hole formed as a cave from erosion during several ice ages in the distant past when sea levels were lower. Eventually, the ceiling of the cave fell in, forming a blue hole. But then, as the ice ages came to an end, ocean levels rose, filling it with water and turning a blue hole into an ocean blue hole. Captain Ken gives us a dive briefing on what to expect.
The ceiling became nice and porous. That eventually caved in.
Next, it's time to suit up. Zach and I follow Dive Master Roque over the edge, down the vertical wall of the blue hole. It's 1,000 feet across, so we can't see the other side, and at 400 feet deep, we won't be seeing the bottom either. At about 100 feet, we reach an overhang filled with stalactites. These icicle-looking formations were formed over thousands of years by dripping water when the ocean levels were lower. Back then, they would have looked like the stalactites in dry caves do now. But since they're submerged in the ocean, they have marine life such as coral, sponges, and algae growing on them. These formations date back as far as 150,000 years, and the largest ones are more than 40 feet long. Down here beyond 100 feet, we don't have much time to explore before we have to turn and head back. Heading back up, I have a look at the life on the wall. There aren't many nooks and crannies for fish. It's mostly some coral and a lot of algae. The shallower we get, the more life there is. At the top, we have a few minutes to make a safety stop, and I have a look at the dense coral reef growing here. As the sea levels rose above the top of the blue hole, coral grew along with it, following the ocean's surface. That's why we can see coral all the way around the blue hole from the air. This healthy reef is home to fish like the French angelfish and queen angelfish, among others. Once we finish our safety stop, we swim across lush seagrass beds to the aggressor. The Great Blue Hole is a world-famous geological formation, which may be too large to truly appreciate from underwater. In my dive, I was only able to see a small part of this immense blue hole in a blue world.
Meet Jonathan Bird, one of the world's top underwater nature cinematographers. Traveling the world on assignment for all the major networks, he is an Emmy Award-winning authority on the underwater world. In freshwater or salt, reefs, wrecks, or caves, Jonathan documents the world beneath the waves. Welcome to the Blue World.
Thousands of years ago, during the last ice age, sea levels were hundreds of feet lower than they are today. Many cave entrances that formed back then are now hidden under the surface of the ocean. Cameraman Todd and I have traveled to Key Cocker, just off the coast of Belize, to explore a famous ocean cave. We arrive at Sunrise Scuba and immediately realize that we're going to have some challenging conditions today. Normally, we don't worry about wind when we're cave diving, but when the entrance to the cave is in the ocean, the surface conditions matter. We leave the dock with Captain Max Novello at the helm. Before we can even think about diving, we have to find the cave entrance. As we get close to the cave, a squall blows in and conditions are getting rough. I'm using a GPS app on my cell phone to help find the entrance. Unfortunately, we can't see it through the water because the storm has churned up the bottom and made the ocean milky. Our dive master, cave explorer Ilya Rosado, will attempt to locate the cave by scuba. While he looks for the cave, Todd and I start pulling our gear together. Soon Ilya has found the cave and marks it with a buoy. It doesn't seem like great conditions for a dive, but in theory it should be fine once we get inside the cave. I'm anxious to get going and get out of this wind. Underwater, things don't look good. The visibility is about 5 feet. We can barely see the entrance to the cave, even when we're right on it. Ilya heads down first, and we follow. Things aren't much better inside, and I'm starting to get a bad feeling about this dive. The first couple of 100 feet into the cave are terrible, and frankly, a little scary. Ilya places an arrow on the line, which is overgrown with marine growth. As the tides come and go, ocean water is pulled in and out of the cave, so bad visibility can come with it. But slowly, as we push on, getting further and further from the ocean, things start to clear up. About 500 feet from the entrance, we can finally see, and we realize why it's called Winter Wonderland. Particles drawn in from the ocean settle like snow on the formations. But the floor of this cave is pure silt, and we have to stay way up off the bottom to avoid creating a silt out. As we progress further into the cave, the water continues to get clearer, but our bubbles are knocking particles off the ceiling. It really does look like a scene out of a Christmas movie. Eventually, we enter a section of the cave where the calcite formations are almost black instead of white like most caves. Scientists think it's caused by bacteria that cover the formations during a period when the water levels are down. I can't get over the fact that literally every formation in here is black. It looks like soot covering everything, and with the white silt, it has a winter wonderland feel for sure. We reach a place where we can't really go much further easily, so it's time to turn around. Now we follow the guideline back out. We know that we're getting closer to the entrance as the visibility goes down. Back in the cavern zone, we pick up our oxygen stage bottles for decompression. This dive reached 150 feet deep, so we have about 20 minutes of deco. We start at 20 feet in the cave, then progress to 10 feet just above the cave. The visibility is so bad that we have to follow the anchor line back to the boat.
Woo! It got better at the end. Once we got past all the silt.
Well, I gotta say, that was a lot of work for a cave dive. But it was fun!
That's what you like to do, man.
The good thing about cave diving is that caves stay right where you left them. However, caves in the ocean can present challenges. Our expedition to Winter Wonderland was not without challenges, but this fascinating cave was well worth the effort. Without question, it was the most interesting ocean cave I've yet seen in the Blue World.
Don't go away. Jonathan and Todd explore a mysterious cave. But first, a night dive on the reefs of Belize.
The Central American nation of Belize is known for some of the most spectacular diving in the Caribbean, with crystal clear water and healthy coral reefs. Located between Mexico and Honduras, this small country is a scuba diver's dream destination. Zach and I are diving with the Belize Aggressor 3, a liveaboard dive boat. We eat, sleep, and dive from this luxury yacht. But the diving doesn't end when the sun goes down. We're suiting up for a night dive. Once the sun has set, we hit the water in search of adventure.
Woohoo! Grab Eddie's fish. Time for a night dive.
Just as lights attract insects above water, they attract plankton underwater. Zach and I are quickly swarmed by bug-like plankton because of our powerful video lights. The local tarpon population has learned to use the divers' lights to their benefit, zooming around us eating the plankton. The coral polyps open up at night to capture plankton with stinging tentacles. I like to bring my light close to the coral to feed them. You might ask, why dive at night? Because the animals on the reef are completely different at night. For example, nocturnal animals like the Caribbean king crab hide in the reef during the day and only come out to feed after dark. The octopus is another example. They're much too vulnerable to predators during the day, so they hide. But at night, they become the predators. An octopus uses long, sucker-equipped arms to reach into cracks and crevices, looking for unwary sleeping fish. Like the octopus, a moray eel takes advantage of the fact that fish sleep in the reef. By slithering into holes, it can catch them off guard and corner them. Basket sea stars spread their finely branched arms to capture plankton like a net. However, they're so sensitive to light that when I try to film them, they immediately close up and hide. The basket star's distant cousin, the donkey dung sea cucumber, is not afraid of light as it sifts through the sand for food. Yes, it's actually called a donkey dung sea cucumber. I did not make that up. I find a stingray hunting. Like a living metal detector, the stingray uses his electrosensory system to find clams and worms buried in the sand. Stingrays have a sharp barb at the base of their tail for defense, but they don't use it unless they feel threatened. Soon my tank is getting low and it's time to head back to the boat. People who don't dive often imagine that night diving is scary and dangerous, but actually it's peaceful and fascinating because of all the different animals to be seen. It's a great way to spend an evening in the blue world. Merritt's Mill Pond in Marianna, Florida is filled with crystal clear water that originates at Jackson Blue Spring. But this diver's paradise actually has 7 diveable caves within its waters. Located about an hour west of Tallahassee, Merritt's Mill Pond is actually a long, skinny section of dammed-up river. We start our day getting our tanks filled at Cave Adventurers, Ed Sorensen's awesome dive shop right on the pond. Then we load our pontoon boat and head out to find hole-in-the-wall cave. To a non-cave diver, a dock in the middle of nowhere probably makes no sense, but it's right next to the cave. Who keeps tying knots in this? With our boat tied up, Todd and I start putting our gear together. Soon we begin the dive. Normally, Todd and I dive with a third diver who handles the lines so we can focus on filming. But today it's just the two of us, so I'm holding Todd's camera as he runs the reel. The beginning of the cave has an incredible chimney that drops straight down to more than 50 feet from just behind the stop sign. Down at the bottom of the chimney, Todd ties our reel into the main line. Once that's done, he can take his camera and off we go. The cave is quite murky today, so it's hard to illustrate just how large some of the rooms are. They go on beyond visibility. Much of the floor of this cave consists of extremely fine silt, so we have to be very careful to stay up away from the bottom. This makes filming a cave crayfish really hard. I have to basically float upside down with my feet way up high to film this little guy without kicking up a storm. Every time we leave a large room and the passage gets smaller, it opens back up again into another huge room. This cave is enormous. We swim past shelf-like formations that were clearly formed when the water was lower. This cave's passages go on for thousands of feet, but it's pretty deep, so we don't go too far before it's time to turn around. As we get back near the entrance, we start to see signs of the world above. Sticks and organic material that have worked their way into the cave. We pass through a medium-sized restriction and then back into the chamber at the base of the chimney. Now I'm carrying two cameras again while Todd is reeling our line in. We soon emerge back into the cavern zone and see the light of day. Out in the pond, a fishy welcoming committee greets us.
Wow. That was a big cave.
That is huge.
We saw the entrance and I'm like, oh, this is going to be small and like really, gnarly, tight cave.
Yeah.
And then once you get through that beginning, it just goes boom. And it's like, whoa.
It's just room after room after room of huge cave.
Huge open cave.
Hole-in-the-Wall Cave is a famous and popular dive in Merritt's Mill Pond. For our first dive there, the visibility was not great, so we didn't go too far. But this means that we're ready for a much further exploration on our next trip to this part of the Blue World.